everybody's doing well this evening.
Good evening, my friend.
What's up, man?
How are you, man?
I'm doing well.
Really looking forward to this, man.
Me too, man. I just came off another podcast that was absolutely the most hilarious thing I've ever watched in my life. I just did a kind of a Calyx Crew podcast, and they were essentially giving away a bunch of my strains.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it was like a dab off. Like it was like they pick a number, and then the number had like a challenge they had to do. So the one dude ended up doing a handstand dab, and then the other dude had to do like a gram dab, and it was like that for an hour. So it was hilarious, and it was intense. It was one of the funniest podcasts I've ever been a part of.
Oh man, that is creative too, man.
And I told him about midway through. I was like, guys, I would have given y'all seeds just because y'all didn't have to do all this.
Was that? I saw someone was giving away your 706 skunk.
I didn't see that.
Pack. It was part of a bundle, and I hadn't seen that in a while.
Yeah, I don't I really haven't seen that one, but this was one. So I did last night. We did like 2.5 hours on the Calyx Crew podcast. And then today they had me back on just to do the like giveaway thing, which I thought was just like, most of them, it's just like a spin the wheel and, you just win something. And these guys were competitors. Like this was serious business. And these guys took it serious. Like the one guy got all of the like acrobatic things. So he had to do like a handstand dab. He had to do a dab on one foot. He had to do like 19 rotations and then do a dab. And then the other guy kept getting all of the like big dabs. He had to do like a 0.5 gram dab, a 1 gram dab. He had to do like a bunch of other hot dabs, and just it was hilarious.
America's Got Talent 420 style. I think it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea.
No, I told him, man, it was the best entertainment for that hour anywhere on the internet. I got to be honest, like it was hilarious to watch.
Oh, yeah, you're.
I'm sure they'll repost it. I'm trying to get what they do is they usually release them on Patreon for their like supporters, and then eventually they release them to everybody else. And when they do, I'll put them on my link tree, and then everybody can watch that shit. It was great.
That's
great.
Smart. Patreon is smart. Are they kind of friendly towards the community, or do you know?
To the best of my knowledge, they're pretty much friendly on anything. Like it's kind of like OF. Like I think yeah, because nothing's actually happening on their platform. It's not like I don't think, maybe I'm wrong. I haven't spent a lot of time on Patreon, to be honest. But yeah, I'm really not sure.
That might be the new path to like seeds. I've seen you started a subscription, right? For a while.
We talked about it at one point.
Okay.
And what we've been doing lately, that's been, to be honest, it's been the biggest hit, is the mystery bags. And my amazing wife puts in, tons of effort into making them really nice. And then I just give her a ton of packs of seeds, and she makes them up, and each one is like $100. And then it's anywhere from 3 to 10 packs. So she just randomly makes each one, and each one is either 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 10. And then she just literally puts postage with it. So it's all random, and, it's kind of a dealer's choice, but you're at least going to double your money. And those have been huge for us. And to be honest, like this sort of stuff, I don't do any like B grade. So I don't have like, testers. I don't have stuff that's like, that nobody's ever run, or, the sort of stuff most people do for freebies. So normally if I'm giving anything away, like it's stuff out of my production lines, it's stuff, it's my regular packs of seeds.
Other than your own line ever in all the years. God, I think I found you when you were coming out with your seasons. I don't know if you remember doing the seasons. You had like the citrus, then you had like the, oh God, white cherry, the white cherry, white truffle.
White cherry truffle. So that was probably, white cherry truffle was probably 17, 18,
Yeah.
like 2017, 2018, somewhere in there. The
And
stuff that I've seen you running, that I mean, I think it's probably the one, right? Is the Nag Champa?
oh, that's my favorite.
Yeah,
That right there is, hands up to you, man. I mean, I have to give you credit, man. Like you the terps on your strains. Not only do I think that like you grow some of the best genetics out there, period, without like the ego or the drama or the narcissism,
right.
you know, that
I
the
appreciate that.
a lot of those people that are on your level get, you know, unfortunately.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, but yeah, man, in addition to you having that top-notch genetic pool, the terp range that you pull on your F1s are unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal. Like,
So here's the thing, man. Like, I've always kind of tried to approach everything I did, whether it was seeds, you know, whether it was anything that I've done commercially, I've always tried to approach it from the notion of I'm a buyer first and I was a grower before I was a breeder. So, like, you know, all of the things that come with that, knowing the pitfalls of buying seeds and not necessarily getting what you're advertised, and customer service, and, you know, and these were the kind of things that when I built a business and when I built, you know, my seed line and started doing seeds 100% full time, I approached everything with that notion of like, if somebody has a question, they want to be able to hit you up and get an honest answer. If somebody spends their money with you, it doesn't just necessarily end there. Like, they've purchased something from you. They have an expectation that that product is going to be of a certain standard. And if it's not, they expect some sort of a recourse. And as you should, as any customer should, those should be the bare minimum for dealing with anybody in this industry, whether it's a dispensary, whether it's a seed company, whether it's a breeder, whether it's a seed bank. You know, just the bare minimum is that if somebody spends money with you, you should at the very least understand that they have expectations. Now, can you meet every customer's expectations 100% of the time? No. And that's the tricky thing, is that the reasons that people grow, you know, the reasons that people get into genetics and into seeds is so varied that for 10 different people, they might all have 10 different expectations. One might want 30% THC. One might want heavy yielding bud. One might want particular profiles. One might want hash yields.
language for that same thing.
You know,
Might
and you're
also,
trying, as a breeder, you're trying to hit as many of those as you can. But I always tell people, like, at the end of the day, any breeder is going to focus on what's important to them, you know? And if what's important to them is flavor, you're going to be able to tell. If what's important to them is height, you're going to be able to tell, you know? And that's what the discerning customer at this point, the seed market's been open for a while. You know, a lot of the breeders that are still here are somewhat established and have a name for themselves or have a reputation, or, you know, and the
yeah.
community at large has policed a lot of that. So if you're a terrible breeder and you're not worth your work, and, you know, you're not going to be around long because people aren't going to spend money with you. And so, you know, at this point, people have such a variety of places they can buy seeds, whether it's direct from breeders, whether it's through seed banks, whether it's through, you know, dispensaries in a lot of states. And, you
How do you feel
know,
about
people, what's that?
how do you feel about seed banks? What's your personal opinion on seed banks? Is it more of like, I mean, there's good and there's bad, obviously, but for me personally, when I first, I remember, do you remember all of that stuff back in the day from where they seed, God, really just called seed sellers or seed something seeds. They were one of the big seed
I remember Seed Bay and Breed Bay, which were like early eBay knockoffs, like mostly auctions, but like some sales. And this is probably, mid 20s, mid 2000s. Um,
It's just called Seed Bank, the Seed Bank on
oh,
IG. And what they were
okay.
doing was they were opening up every single pack that they got from the breeders and then replacing them with Tino's Rotten Peaches. They got a ton of Tino's Rotten Peaches on the low, and they just didn't expect people to figure it out. And ever since then, it's been like go straight to the breeder.
Yeah. I would say that's definitely an exception. Like most of the bigger seed banks. So let me go back just real quick, and your initial question is my feeling on seed banks. A good seed bank is a great thing, but after 2020, after the big seed boom and all the extra stimulus money, everybody was a seed bank for about a year and a half, right? And so a lot of people took that extra money they had, invested it in seeds, turned around, realized they have no marketing skills. They're not really good at like moving units. So they inevitably didn't really do much. And now they kind of went on and sold whatever they bought and moved on. Most of the bigger seed banks are fairly reputable on the customer side. At this point, the bare minimum should be a website of your own, a credit card processor, the ability to pay in a normal way. That's for a long time we were all operating on like Venmo and Cash App and PayPal, and like now there's legitimate, if you're running a legitimate seed business, there's tons of, credit card processors that will deal with you. And so, it just comes down to like knowing who you're dealing with, having some, expectations. Like we've all gotten in the situation where we went, this bank has a strain I just can't live without. Like I know it doesn't seem right, but I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna gamble. I'm gonna pull the slot machine, and I'm gonna hope that this strain that I'm really dying to run shows up.
And
right?
the only banks that I've ever bought from are ones that are still around today. Like I did buy from True Nature, who I think is the guy. Turpy Seeds back in the day, and then Neptune. Those are the three that I've.
So let me. That was mostly on the customer side. Now, as a breeder, I feel like 99% of the seed banks aren't really a necessary evil we have to deal with, and that most of them are just people trying to get rich off the fact they're not really growers and they're not really breeders, and they just have connections within the industry. Now, the ones that are actually paying breeders for seeds and that they make their order, they pay you their money, they get their seeds and they sell them, they're few and far between, but those are your best bets. Shout out to Multiverse. Multiverse is one of the best that I've ever dealt with. One of the few that, isn't begging for consignment, isn't trying to like, that's the other thing is that 90% of the seed banks want you to send them the seeds on consignment, and then they're going to sell them and then send you your money. And that's a horrible way to do business. It ends up making more enemies than friends at the end of the day. Those deals don't really work out for most people. And so, when I say seed banks are a great thing for a customer, and they're maybe not always the best thing in the breeder's check category, I mean, it's just the experience that I've had with them. I've had one that, came back repeatedly and could sell to their own customers and didn't want me to advertise and do the sales and then just let them get the sales.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, especially considering that that they're marking it up at least 2 times what they're paying. They're making at least 100% profit on every pack.
Yep.
Period. There's no
absolutely.
way when buying at bulk, And you're right. Like I've literally bought 3 packs, and they're all packs that I really, really wanted. Peanut butter breath, garlic breath, and sugar cane and slurking.
And I had one of the weirdest experiences with peanut butter breath, and I've run garlic breath, sherb breath, and peanut butter breath. Okay, all amazing strains. They all did super well. But at one point, I had a whole space of peanut butter breath, and the goal was to wash it all, fresh frozen, vac dry it, press it all as rosin, right? So like generally they call all these ghost batches, and it's the most heartbreaking thing you've ever seen. There were literally pounds, gorgeous nug, gorgeous nut, beautiful, beautiful. Passed the smell test, really heavy, like chocolate, like cushy profile. Washed the whole batch, pounds, and I got like less than a couple grams of hash.
Was it like super, super greasy, or?
It just, the resin just didn't separate. It all just came down to like a resin quality thing. Like it's the perils of, you know, washing hash and like solventless hash, and how fickle it is to find a strain that makes amazing hash. And anybody that's ever washed hash, like on a commercial level, has seen it.
Oh, absolutely.
Because everybody does it grade product the same, and so you inevitably run something and you just go, man. And it's not the grower. It's not necessarily that it was grown poorly. Like I said, this would have been beautiful, like top 10 nug all day.
Did it have?
But like it just didn't wash.
Washing structure, because a lot of your great washers have that very beautiful structure where, you know, it's super leaves that peel real nice. And
let me put it to you this way, right? I've seen a ton of plants. If I thought when I harvested it that it wasn't gonna, to be fair, this was the first time I had washed this particular, and the other thing was it was a mixed pheno. So there were all different there was like 3 or 4 different phenos, like a seed hunt. But to be honest, there wasn't a plant there that told me before this ain't gonna work. You know, I had scoped everything. Everything looked good. I didn't do like a whole, you know, this is before we were doing jar tests and stuff, but like.
Did you see how long the necks were and how thick they were?
Everything visually, everything told me this was going to go great, right? And once again, I've run both garlic breath and sherb breath, and both of those wash well, and they make great crosses. So like I've made a couple of crosses with some of the breath strains and stuff, and they usually generally, especially that garlic breath, the Ultimate Flex that I made, which was the garlic breath, meatball maybe. Oh no, white cherry wedding cake.
Yep, I still have that to pop, man, and I'm looking forward to it.
But that was the one, like the garlic breath, it showed out, like in crosses and washes. But honest to God, man, like the peanut butter breath, I never would have run another plant there, to be honest with you. Because here's the thing, like normally in a mixed pheno room, what you'll see in a wash is that you'll get hash, right? It just might not melt all that well because there's almost always one pheno that just isn't the washer, you know, isn't the perfect strain. And then you always get into this, like,
some develop a little take longer to develop. So when you chop them, they're not as in that zone to break.
Right. With water hash, it's almost always the quality of the trichome. Like, how big is the trichome, the amount of oil to wax ratio, you know, the cuticle that holds it all together. And then, how well does that separate at the head and the stalk stay, you know? And so when I'm like trimming, the way I look for it is just the one that leaves beach sand everywhere, just everywhere. Just from looking at it, there's beach sand and they're whole on your finger. You can almost see the whole individual trichomes as they stick to your finger. And you can usually bet that's going to be a candidate for wash. Now, once again, this was years ago with the peanut butter breath, and I don't want to knock anybody. It was purely one of those things that, like, that's how washing hash goes, you know? I mean, that's life. But it was just that heartbreaker. As soon as you said peanut butter breath, like there's a piece of my heart that breaks every single time. Because the whole thing was I could have just dried it and I could have just run it all as flour, just like, you know, just just trimmed it all up. And I got grams. Like it was less than 10. Like it was like, and it was bad, like it was one of those washes you just go, this wasn't a strain.
You know, the crazy thing is I crossed peanut butter breath to your Nag Champa.
Oh,
And you're absolutely right. In no manner would I wash it, but for a different reason, actually.
hey,
Uh,
somebody asked a quick question. I want to hit this. So the reason I say the more sandy, the better, because if you have really thin, waxy membranes, so like when you touch the plant and it's just water almost on your fingers, that's usually not the one that's going to hold up to the water. It's usually not the one that's going to hold up really well to like the wash. But I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I wanted to hit that comment.
there's actually a channel. Have you ever heard of well, it's like SHWALE. They do
Swallow
micro. Oh,
it.
and most of the stuff they do is about trichomes and thickness of trichomes, the necks, the heads, and optimizing the break and stuff. But sorry, back to the peanut butter breath fashion. Not really.
In no way, was in no way bashing peanut butter bread. I just want to say that it was one of those strains that always broke my heart. Shout out to Thug Pug. I got nothing with him. I'm not hating on any other breeder's genetics because I hate when people do that to me. It was just a personal story that's like become that batch so that when I like, it's like I said, on a commercial level, when you run a lot of hash, you see it. But 90% of the time at that point, it's somebody else's grow. So it's like somebody just gives you a bunch of material, you run it, it just doesn't go well for you, and you just have to go, man, I'm really sorry, bro, but it's like, But then when it's you and when it's all yours, it's that one that always kind of rides with you because you just charge that one to the game. There's nothing. It's gone. Like you got nothing, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's one of those where like I said, when you run mixed pheno stuff, you never really know how it's going to go. So it's always a gamble. But yeah.
It totally is. And for me, the Thug Pug mixed with the Nag Champa created terps that, if you wash them, they wash away. Like,
Oh, yeah.
There's quite a few terps that are, they're not alcohols, but they act like alcohols essentially. Like they're soluble in water, they're soluble in oil.
That's something we've definitely seen is like not with the Nag Champa particularly. Most people that wash the Nag Champa tell me it washes really well. But there's definitely certain strains that in the wash, a lot of, you can usually tell the ones that smell a lot
Yeah.
while you're washing, that's your terps. You're beating that out and it's not staying in your trichome. It's now in your water and it's now, everywhere. And so there's just certain strains, both in the quality of the trichome and in the content of the oil, because there's certain, like you said, certain terpenes tend to not like to stay within that waxy membrane as you're beating them with water.
Yeah.
And it's so like I always found, and I always hate to say this, but I always found OGs to be one of those strains that like as soon as you get it in the wash, it smells amazing, but then 90% of OG hash, like water hash, not rosin, just water hash, just tends to kind of taste like generic hash to me. It doesn't have that like nuance of like earthiness and peat and like gassy kind of thing. And it just, all of the nuance is gone. Now, when you rosin it at that point, it's usually much better.
Oh yeah, dry sift. Oh, but even dry sift with this Nag Champa peanut butter crust, and it's not the Nag Champa, it's the peanut butter in it for sure. Because I know your Nag Champa. It's my favorite strain. I've probably worked with it more than any other strain ever in my growing
To be
experience.
honest, man, that's why I had you on, because there's a couple of funny things about the cut that I see you run. So, in my opinion, it's a little more sativa than most.
Yeah.
Um, she tends to be on the sativa side, but yours tends to be really heavy on the sativa side, in structure at least. But it's got gorgeous trichomes.
Oh, oh, and she washes the way that she grows. Like, I mean, yeah, no. I saw a picture of someone growing a Nag Champa, and it sold me. It was the same thing with Slurricane. I was like, I need that strain. And I think I contacted you, and I was like, I need this, man.
It's one of those strains, man, that like somebody I did another podcast yesterday when I was doing the Calyx. Shout out one more time to the Calyx Crew podcast. Go find those guys, give them a watch, give them a listen. Awesome time. But I forgot what the fuck I was gonna say. I'm kind of based. But we're talking Nag Champa.
Nag Champa, man.
Uh, I'm so sorry.
Super.
I've been talking for 3 days straight, and I'm absolutely at a burnout point. Yeah, I completely lost it. I'm sorry.
It like the array of terps within Nag Champa. Not only just that, but like you were saying, it's a combination of the structure, the pineapple sorbet. One of the reasons that I was so excited about this pineapple sorbet cut is because it's almost a 1-to-1. You know, most people don't know that because it's a hard hitting 1-to-1. You know, it's a high.
So, two things. The first thing, the question they asked me on the podcast last night was the strain that if I were gone tomorrow, the strain that would represent my work the best. My initial answer was black. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm baked to shit. My initial answer was the blackout truffle, but it's right next to the Nag Champa in the sense that, like, I think it's one of the best strains I've ever put together. I think it checks as many boxes as a human possibly could. And it's, if I wanted to be remembered for one thing, it's complex flavor profiles. And that and the blackout truffle to me are two of the absolute best in that category. And let's be honest, man, and they're the two that more people have hit me up about. When are you doing more about? You know, like it's
No question, man. If you look at my collection of your strains, at least 50% of them deal with your pineapple sorbet, and the work you've done with the pineapple sorbet, from churros, you know, all the way to, you know, God, I'd have to get it out, my list out. But
so real quick. Shout out to Leapfrog Genetics. Those guys have been working with a lot of those sorbet lines. They've done tons of testing, like even genetic testing, on a ton of those strains. And that's always one of the ones that I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Nag Champa, they call it the Champa Rose, because it's like, it's a rose heavy pheno, but like, that's kind of the beautiful thing. And the quick point I was going to make is that they've tested a lot of them with some CBD and with some CBG, I think. But you know, it's not enough that like I don't advertise that, because it's not like, you know, I don't, it's just not my niche. So I'm not like trying to sell CBD heavy strains. But when I see that, I definitely try to pass it on and let people know, you know, when something like, and that's the beauty of some of those lines, man, is that there's stuff in there profile wise. If you grew 20 plants, they might all have completely different profiles. In to say one's rose and one, I've heard people say grape. To me, it's like incense and pineapple candy sometimes, but those are the ones that I select for. But it's such a unique, anything sorbet, once again, just dropped a sorbet line, terpfiend.com. But
We can
any of those sorbet crosses are just next level complex.
just get your feedback on a couple of these drops you got coming up here, which sucks because like, God, I wanted to talk a little bit more about frickin' just, you know, yeah, I mean, all the way back to the orange truffle, which was your white cherry white truffle times to orange Skittles. I literally had purple plants right next, like purple sativa structured plants right next to bright green indica plants. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
range is beautiful to me, man.
So somebody asked what a sorbet is. It's a four-way cross. I have to remember off the top of my head what order they're in, but it's a pineapple tie in the pines, Skittles, and Magnum Opus. So there's a reasonable amount of Kush with some exotic stuff, but like I haven't seen any cushy profiles. I haven't seen anything that would like favor heavily Kush stuff. But we did find in the F3s of the pineapple sorbet a really weird and unique Thai pepper pheno that's just like heavy pepper, old school. But the beautiful thing was it grew just like a beautiful new school hybrid, but it had that like old school. It looked like the sorbet. It looked just like every other sorbet I've grown as far as like the bud structure, the resin structure, like it was all perfect. But instead of being like the candy, incense, rose, whatever, the really unique, it was just pepper. Just pepper. It's almost hard to describe it any other way. And it was such a weird finding.
On pepper, you know what I mean? It's not in flavor, not in flavor. It's a pepper smell on Gary Payton. It never tastes like pepper. Maybe like a slight pepper in the background. I don't know.
Yeah, it smells
And that's
more like pepper, but then it tastes more like, just to me, like old school haze.
Yeah, a little bit of citrus, some funk and some gas in there. But yeah, like the difference between the taste of the terpenes versus the smell of the terpenes. Completely, very rarely do they line up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But God damn it, when they do.
Well, see, the thing that I love about the Nag Champa, and it goes, the resin quality on the Nag Champa is almost exclusively because of the mother. The mother was the Big Dirty from Cookie, Maine, and it was essentially an alien Wi-Fi Tangy Girl Scout cookies cross. So I always said that it had the trichomes of the cookies, right? But it had like this citrus motor oil, kind of weird citrus, but way more complex profile. But it brings the resin quality to all of the crosses that I made with it. And then the sorbet in that one was what really gave it that just like deep and complex profile that like it. And the thing that people have told me that wash it, they love about it is that actually comes through in the finished product in a lot of ways.
It literally, like, and that's another thing, to find a washer that comes through the way that it smells and then tastes that way too. You can taste, like you said, the layers, the deepness within like the terp profile, and it's got to be a combination of being able to be washed and then also, having the right terps that like the other thing too is like Nag Champa, Colorado is so dry, Nag Champa will hold on to its terps longer than most strains. I don't know. I couldn't explain to you why. It's got to be something
more. This is more oil. It's like,
yeah. Maybe
the beautiful thing about all of those sorbet crosses is that they all have gorgeous resin, but the profiles tend to be this beautiful mix of complex from the sorbet and then whatever the mom is, right? And so it's a beautiful crossing strain because the terps don't exactly fight with each other in the cross, and it's not super dominant to one or the other. Like you almost always see a lot of that like really unique candy pineapple incense funk, but then with a strain like the pineapple meatball, which is the meat breath F2 cross to the sorbet, those are almost all exclusively like Italian spices, meat with like a candy weird thing. The reason I'm kind of ending my work with this sorbet line, the one that we've kind of worked to, this is the F4s that I just did, is that I feel like going past F4, I'm just narrowing down that massive palette of flavors. And it's like, I would rather go back to the F1s, see what else is there, do another line, and then at some point, if we want to, we can combine the best of those two or something like that. But like, I don't want to, nobody's begging me for F8s where every plant has the exact same generic profile. That's
Yeah, to be honest,
not what I'm hunting for. You know, like I want different, I want unique, I want complex. And I'm willing to dig to find that. And so I'm going to go back with the original ones that I have, some of the most expensive seeds I've ever dealt with. Like, you know, when I bought those seeds, I got like 2 or 3 packs in different situations, you know, from different people. And it's probably $2,000 worth of, almost $2,000 worth of seeds.
yeah,
But like,
just so people know, it's a connoisseur strain, so it's no fucking around. No fucking around on that.
but that's a great example. We were talking last, oh, I'm sorry.
You got, I'm so stoked about your coughing fit, that you were able to find some original cough, man. That's some of my, like, growing up, cough was one of those ones that would come around rarely, you know, and you'd be so stoked when it came around. I'm so happy you were able to track one down, put it into a project of yours, and it to be the pineapple sorbet one of all of them.
That, first of all, is the closest you're ever going to see me get to anything haze related. So enjoy it. That's probably one of the more sativa leaning crosses that I've ever made intentionally. The only reason that I ever touched that strain is because I had a buddy many years back that turned me on to some bud, right? I get in the car, hands me a pipe, I hit the pipe, I cough. Like, I'm talking about you coughed. Like, it hit your lungs, and then it expanded twice the size of your lungs, and you were, like, coughing your ass off. And I was like, what is this? And he's like, it's the cough. And I was like, get out of here. Of course it's, what's it called? And he's like, no, it's the cough. And I'm like, it's the most apt strain of weed, named strain of weed I've ever encountered. And so when I worked with it, I found some, I think it was cough back cross that somebody had done, and I dug through them. And the one that I used had giant trikes, but they were so oily. Like when you would trim it, or when you would, you know, even, and that's, you can tell it's just got a ridiculously high terpene count. And so as soon as you just would like barely touch a couple little trikes, it was on you. It stunk all day long of just like, that's another one that's kind of peppery, you know, like it's that hazy, not the sweet haze, kind of the Dutch haze.
Yeah.
It's the old school 70s pepper haze. When I see that profile, I always think old school.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of one of those that, like, I had some, I had a cross at one point that was something crossed to some Colombian. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head. And it had that, like, old school, like, chocolate, pepper, but myrcene heavy. Ooh. So it's just, it's like almost like sandalwood incense, or like, you know, leather, you know. And man, I always tell people the story that, like, the terms that we use for sativa and indica are absolutely horrible
They're terrible.
because the weed that I had, if you had to tell me one strain that got you the highest you ever were in your life, the easiest way to answer that is there was a joint. I had somebody come up to me at a cannabis cup and hand me, like this dude just walks up, pulls out like a daily pill planner and just starts like setting weed down in front of me. And I'm like dealing with a customer. We're at like a cannabis cup event. I'm dealing with a customer and he just quietly like sets up a bunch of weed. And when I'm done, he just explains to me what each one of them was. And then he kind of walks off. And I'm like, I don't even remember if we like really exchanged many pleasantries. He might have told me who he was, but like he didn't stick around. We didn't really talk. So he leaves these 3 little nugs on the table, and they looked like 1970s, high times picture, but in the best way. Tiny little buds that were really dark in color, like almost to the point where they looked like they had been dipped in dark hash or something. Just had like a very dark sheen to them. Had a real like cedar and hickory type of profile. So we break this little joint up. It's a little skinny joint. There's a table. We're in a dabbing competition type of event where everybody's doing dabs, everybody's getting baked. I passed this tiny little joint around, and you'd have thought I'd have given everybody oxys. You'd have thought I'd given everybody dope. They were all like falling asleep, and like everybody went to sleep. And it was a land race tie. Almost pure sativa, almost in every way you could think of, pure sativa.
Absolutely.
But it absolutely devastated everybody at the table. Like literally, we all were looking at each other like, who's going on the Red Bull run? Because this event just started, and now we're all about to go to sleep. Like I look around, and everybody's like, y'all gotta wake up. That was a tiny little joint. But the traditional terms that we use for sativa and indica, traditionally you think sativa and it's going to be peppy. I'm going to have a panic attack. I'm going to have and this was about as sativa as it got. And I would have, on the spot that day, I would have paid every dollar in my wallet for as much of that as I could have gotten my hands on right then and there. I mean, it was arguably top 5 weed I ever smoked in my life. But as far as like pure effects, it was like rhino tranquilizer. It was like literally, and this is long before the issues of like, did somebody adulterate my weed or is there something sprayed? This was legitimately the grower. He and I had interacted online a few times. And so once he told me who he was, I kind of got it. But he was an old school kind of cat, didn't want to sit around and talk, didn't want to chit chat. Everything he left me was amazing. It was, 6 or 8 different kinds of weed. Everything was amazing. But this landrace tie was, man, yeah. And I mean, if I could breed for that specifically, whatever that plant had, like just that knock you out like a hammer.
Oh,
but
God.
that's what I'm looking for at any given point. That's what I'm looking for.
Is because God, Wonder Woman did that for me, right? I smoked a joint of Wonder Woman and got so stoned that, the world started spinning on me and I got gonged really good. Had to sit down, brace myself, you know what I mean? And I was like, oh man, this is going to be my smoke for the rest of my life, The gongs go away. That's the sad thing.
No, man, the best thing you can do at that moment is find something carb heavy to eat. 3 pieces of pizza down the gullet as quick as you can get it and half a Red Bull, and you'll be fighting strength again in 45 minutes, man. Like there was a time and a place where that was like a death knell for a day. Like you were literally, once you got to that point, you were done. And so we would do, Canna events where your whole day is maybe 8 hours of dabbing, of just smoking, people handing you joints, people handing you pipe, and it's like tolerance. Hell, you just have to know how to control your body in those moments and know what's going to help. Like once you get to that line where you're like, hey, I'm a little bit, you got to just eat, get you a half a Red Bull, give that 30 minutes, and you're going to be back to like just good to go. And it's just kind of a tolerance thing where like, once you've done it at that level for a while, like you just know how to kind of pace yourself. It's like anything, you know, kind of where that line is, and then you kind of know kind of what the tricks are. Like, you try to get it before it starts spinning on you, because just like with drinking, by the time it all starts spinning, you're kind of already too late. You should have had them cheap pizzas and burritos like 45 minutes ago, and you should have hit them up. We've all done it, man.
Oh man. Or when you're like, so how you going to coughing or laughing fits? Those are
Right. Well, see, the thing that always got me was like edibles, and not necessarily because, I have a pretty high tolerance for edibles, but with edibles, it all comes down to the decarb. How much did you decarb? How long did you decarb? Did you convert some of that THC to CBN? So, like, I always made my edibles way too strong for anybody else I knew. So, like, I had a really awesome ice cream recipe I did for a while. We did, tons of gummies and hard candies and stuff like that. And the problem that I had was, like, I would use significantly less hash, and people would still tell me how overwhelming it was, because I make them for my strength. So, like, for me, I don't want to have to eat a whole brownie to get high.
right.
I don't mind necessarily if it tastes shitty and it's not the best tasting thing, but like I don't want to have to eat, a whole piece of cake or a whole, so like I would make ice cream and it would be hot. Like you would put it in your mouth and it would almost burn the back of your throat, but you didn't need to eat much of it and you were gone. Like, once again, I put whole parties of people to sleep with just a little pint of ice cream, and it's just, I make it I call it grower strength, right? But like even that can be misleading, because I've known growers that like they smoke and they smoke well, but like, they're not necessarily people that sit down and smoke 8 hours straight,
Right.
And that's a whole different level of like, competition. Man, the funny thing was about, somebody just said I need the ice cream recipe. The funny thing about the ice cream recipe was it was something I picked up online, and it was pretty much like they make prison ice cream. I don't know if you've ever seen a YouTube video, but those have become pretty popular about, how they do the hustle in jail and this, that, or the other. And one of the ways that they do it is like with a gallon Ziploc. Let's be honest, it's just sugar milk. It's really good sugar milk, but it's essentially just a bag with sugar milk, and chocolate syrup. And then at that point, you can use the milk. So one of the best ways to make any edibles is with milk. If you can use milk, because there's so much fat that it grabs almost every bit of THC. And so you can make legitimate ice cream with a legitimate ice cream recipe in an ice cream maker. But what we would do is make it in like gallon Ziploc bags. You pour ice and salt, and then you take your bag with your milk concoction, put it in, and you just put it in the freezer, let it get cold, and then just roll it out, like just kind of make it, agitated enough, and it'll freeze eventually. You do enough of those, and you just put them in a big ice cream tote. And this was, to be fair, when I picked up this recipe and used it a lot, it was when I, earlier in my smoking days, beyond the point where we were just putting sticks and seeds and everything into brownies, but like it was still in the somewhat earlier days. But it's still a great recipe. Like I said, if you're looking for easy edibles, just boil down some milk. Put your product, hash, weed, whatever it is, into milk. Boil that down, like with the milk on a low simmer. Double boil for 30 minutes, right? And then that right there will get you more baked than any edible you're ever going to go get. You can put it in coffee. You can put it in, anything that you would do with it, but literally put some sugar in it and freeze it, and you got ice cream. It's super versatile, but it's one of those that it's probably the best extraction method for easy edibles that I can think of. You can also add it to baking a cake at that point. You could add it to, any number of recipes.
Dude, anything savory. I actually think flavor wise, it's very similar to like oregano
Mm-hmm.
cooking wise.
Yeah.
So thing that uses oregano, you could sub cannabis in, and you're gonna get different but similar outcomes. Soups are freaking awesome for
Yeah,
infusion.
and that's the problem is that like so many of the edibles in the world ever are sugar, are
Yeah.
sweets. And don't get me wrong, like I love that, but like that's just not great for anybody to eat a ton of. And if it's a low dose sort of situation, the nature of it is you have to eat a bunch of it to get whatever it is. And so that was always my approach to edibles in general. There's a fine line between it'll get you absolutely slayed and this is so nasty we can't eat it. So, like when you find that level, then you back down just a little bit, add a little bit more of whatever your flavor component is. But like you said, man, anything that's savory is so much, it's just so much easier. But once again, not everybody can do milk. That's a whole nother thing. Every one of the edibles options is good for some people and not good for others. But I just always thought like just tons of sugar is not the best way to consume weed. Now, the problem with it is oil, sugar in general, and hash go really well together. So if you have something like BHO, getting that into a sugar recipe is super easy because they homogenize really simply, and it's not, you don't have to fight it, and it just generally is really easy way to make edibles. And that's really why sugar-based edibles are so, hard candies and gummies and things like that are so popular, is because it's easier to get the weed into it, and it's easier to make it so it's not terribly nasty with plant matter. And most edibles, commercial edibles companies work with hash.
Yeah.
It's all made into some sort of an extract and then goes in. So sugar is just one of those that's really easy when you're trying to meet trichomes to get it into something edible.
I use all of my rosin that I don't smoke for edibles, and those edibles are always gummies.
What's up?
Just because
Okay.
it's just so,
Sorry.
you know. Usually I'll do at like 10 mils of decarb rosin. Just like a little bit of coconut oil just to make it more soluble, and add the least amount of water possible, and mix it in with like, I like the Starburst Jello.
Yeah.
for,
If you're
for
if you're making rosin, man, one of the best things you can do is save your rosin chips. But we had those tested at one point. This was in the earlier days of rosin when it was all hair straighteners, but they were still testing with like 40 to 50% THC. And you can it's already almost all decarbed. So you can literally just that and coconut oil or that and, alcohol. And you can make some, really amazing edible oil. And you'd be surprised at how much is still there even today with better presses and.
and it comes out looking beautiful.
Yeah.
Gold,
Yeah.
because I don't know why. Do you think the chlorophyll gets trapped in there when we press it?
No, so the nature of water hash is generally you remove 90% of the chlorophyll. If you made great water hash to start with. Now, are you pressing flour? Is that what you mean?
So I use both chips from flour, because so when I make flour rosin, I use the best flour I have.
I was specifically talking about hash with those numbers.
Oh, okay. And then I also use hash too. So it's like I just keep a jar full of chips and hash.
Yeah, you're probably right. It probably just smashes it all into a matrix. So when you go to extract it, like once again, if you're not like over soaking it in whatever, alcohol or whatever, coconut oil, whatever your situation is, if you're not overdoing it, then it should be easy and it should be a light extraction, but it should still get you a really awesome product. But yeah, I always tell people, man, the worst thing I've ever seen is people throwing away rosin chips because there's still so much there that you can do for edibles and extractions.
Absolutely, man. It's one of the coolest things about that I just love about the cannabis plant is just the infinite number of things that you can do with it, you know? Like infinite. Like I will never be able to grow all the seeds that I have.
Oh yeah,
Even though
yeah.
I want to,
Nah, that's a bad problem.
right?
It's like money. It's so much easier to spend than it is to make. With seeds, they're so much easier to collect than they are to grow them all. So you just have this situation where they pile up and like it's such a small thing. But when you have hundreds of thousands to millions of seeds, it becomes a situation with all the packaging and with all the storage and with all the, to the point where like I've had to back off a little bit because it's gotten overwhelming. Like I have whole totes full of seeds. And it's so often people like, like you said, you made something with a Nag Champa. Somebody will hit me up and be like, dude, I was so stoked. I bred with your stuff. Here's some seeds. I have totes of those from where people send me stuff and I just don't know what to do. I go through it and I run the best of what I can find. But I mean, I could have 100 acres and we could run different strains every year and I couldn't go through it. Is smoke 'em on. That's genius. Smoke 'em on. Got to collect them all. Yeah, it's worse than baseball cards because, there's always that notion that you're going to have one in your collection and it's going to be the next big thing, or it's going to be partly going to cross with the next big thing. And so you're always collecting. And like I said, I do everything as a breeder and as a seed seller from the point of view of like a customer. And it's like, I know how bad it is. We all struggle. We should start a Facebook group of just seed buyers so we can all talk about how angry our families are at us and the ridiculous amounts of seeds that we've accumulated. And anyway, man, we are right at the last few minutes we have of this. Thank you so much, man. That was an easy hour. We're still
Man.
running we're still running 420 sale. I was going to leave it up through the weekend. So if anybody wants to put an order in, everything's still 31 or 30% off, except for the sorbet. The sorbet is still the newest drop, so it's not discounted. But everything else on the site is 30% off. For every $100 you spend.
On there,
oh, sorry.
That. Make sure they know that napalm can is still on there.
Oh, yeah. The napalm can and the blackout truffle. There's a ton of Nag Champa strains still on there. There's a ton of Mecha Godzilla strains. For every 100 you spend, you get a free pack of your choice. And if you spend at least 100, you get a free T-shirt, Turp Basket. I had them on last night. I forgot to put it on again. The Turp Basket T-shirt, you get a free one. Leave your free packs and your free packs and your shirt size in the order comments. Anywhere else people can find you at the Real Grow Doctors? Don't you guys have a website?
It's just thegrowdoctors.com, and we do customized terp-based soaps, lotions. If you just want straight terps for like a cologne or a perfume, they are based upon strains. So if you have a mister and you're smoking that strain, it will enhance the experience of that strain, that strain and the entourage effect. They're not meant for adding to your concentrate.
No. My wife got super stoked because when I told her, I gave her your stuff when we were doing the ads for the week, and she was like, wait, I have a website. They have like soap, or they have like cool stuff. And I was like, dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. So
yes, sir.
What's the website?
thegrowdoctors.com.
All right, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you showing up and chatting with me, man. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Absolutely. My pleasure, man.
Thanks, brother. You have a good one. Peace.
Much. Later, brother.